Welcome to the Silver Screen Project, where we look back at a series of films in anticipation of an exciting new cinema release.
In preparation for Dungeons and Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves, we went back and watched Dungeons and Dragons from the year 2000 and are now here for the main event, Dungeons and Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves. Among Thieves.
Among Thieves, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
What did you think of Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah, which one?
The new one,
Honor
of course.
Among Thieves. Yeah, no, I thought it was good. It really felt like they were doing fantasy with kind of a Marvel lens.
Yeah, I
It
can
very
see
much
that.
felt inspired by that sort of thing. It really kind of hit the spots in terms of what I wanted from a D&D film in the way that maybe the previous one didn't so
Yeah.
much. And yeah, I thought the heroes were all pretty fun. There's a pretty fun plot. What about yourself?
I thought it was really good.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Mm.
It was funny. It was like heartwarming. It was interesting. It felt like a D&D campaign.
Yeah.
Not that I played it, but that's how I imagine it.
Yeah, from what we know, yeah.
I get what you say with the Marvel stuff. It definitely had that kind of Marvel humor. I think one way
tonally,
in which it was better than some of that Marvel thing is that there was these kind of deep, heartwarming moments where they didn't just throw in like a one-liner that so many Marvel films do. They let those moments kind of sit there, and it was like,
I would agree.
there's kind of deep things to this. But it was really good.
And I think in terms of the humor as well, a lot of it was like, it was more situational. It wasn't like everyone's doing one-liners. Like there were certain central characters that filled that role intentionally, but it wasn't like you say, like everyone's suddenly like, oh, what about that?
Exactly. It was funny when it called for humor.
Yeah. And the funny characters were like, their character is funny. It's not that everyone's funny kind of thing.
And there's some characters in it that are funny because of how like straight they play it. Essentially, there's humor in that.
Yes.
So we won't go into spoilers just yet. So one thing that I really liked is one thing I kind of touched on when we spoke about it last time, but was just the magic in it. I think in this is great. Like the different use, it looked fantastic. The CGI is brilliant.
Yes.
But the different use of different types of magic were really fun. There's a couple of bits that come up a couple of times.
Yeah, but most of the time it's like you almost see a spell once and then that's it. And they keep going with different stuff, and different situations require different magic or different enemies or different characters. Yeah, it was very varied.
Like, they introduce like magical items and they're like, this does this. And you're like, cool. And then they use it and it's like, cool, without going into the full like backstory. Or sometimes it's like, we've got to go get this magical thing. And it's like, oh, a little mini adventure within. There was lots of little mini adventures within the grand adventure, which I liked.
And that felt very much like what you expect from a campaign. Yes.
And I liked that not all of them went somewhere initially. Like they do stuff like have this little mini adventure and then it kind of doesn't work out, so they have to do something else. I'm like, I'm glad it didn't just all lead up. And it's like there was some failures in
Lots
there.
of it doesn't work out for the characters, or it kind of finds out it ends up maybe working out in different ways than expected. And there's some kind of heisty moments throughout. I feel like, weirdly enough, like both this and the other Dungeons and Dragons film lean quite heavily on like the thief aspect, which I don't know. I don't think it's massively central to D&D.
Part of me feels like it's because then you can have a lead character who's a human, so you've got your POV character essentially surrounded by this magical world rather than they are magic themselves.
But some of the high stuff, again, we won't go into any specifics now, but there's some stuff towards the start, and then as the adventure goes on, there's a couple of moments where they do some quite fun little creative, ocean style, here's what we're going to do, here's it happening, and that sort of thing. And I thought a lot of that stuff, even just like making a quick plan on the fly and then them doing it, like it all was very original, very creative. Like generally plot wise, it kept me guessing most of the time. Like even towards the climax of the film, you kind of know where the overall world ending situation is going, but how the heroes kind of play into it isn't really that apparent until almost the very, very final part, which is quite interesting.
Like, kind of like you said, it's gonna happen, they're gonna save the day, they're gonna defeat the villain, but even when it gets to that final bit, you're like, I don't know how they're gonna stop this person.
And they almost don't as well. And there's also a couple of moments where it's like things aren't going right, and they have the kind of moment where they're kind of sitting there going, oh, what's going on? And then you mentioned the emotional stuff. There's a couple of bits where they kind of come together as an unlikely group. There's some kind of more heart-wrenching, emotional family stuff towards the end as well, and throughout. All those moments really hit home in a way that both Marvel stuff and other films of this tone haven't always done recently.
Yeah, like there's plenty of Marvel films that do hit that heartwarming side, but they still throw in the jokes, and like not to disparage the heartwarming, but just to keep it lighthearted. Whereas this is like, it's lighthearted and silly, but they know when to be serious, and when they are, it's really good.
I think in terms of Marvel stuff, and it's only because I've well, not only because I've watched it recently, but I feel like Guardians of the Galaxy is the closest kind of analogy here, especially that first one when the group's coming together. And the fact that James Gunn does balance the humor and emotion better than some other Marvel films. I feel like that template is the closest I'd use. But still, I think it was not.
I 100% agree. I think when I went to see it with Christina, when she came out, she was like, this felt like a Guardians-esque thing, and it is. It's a group of kind of ragtag random people who all have their flaws and their strengths and their own backstories coming together for a greater good. And they're funny, but have the heartwarming. It is, like you said, Guardians is the closest Marvel comparison.
Yeah. But I mean, the characters are great. We won't go too much into anyone specific now, but there's a couple of good moments between them. There's some history. There's a couple of little cameos. There's one particular that I thought was quite funny, and that was an emotional moment as well. That worked out quite nicely. There's some great dungeon crawling bits towards the middle where they kind of, like you say, they go on this little side quest. There's a character that comes in for that's very fun, and then isn't in it for most of the rest of the film, or really any of the rest of the film, which is another surprise because you think this person's turned up, they're going to join them. No, that's just almost like a guest character that came into the campaign or a guest player or whatever.
I saw some people describe him as an NPC controlled by the dungeon master.
Yeah, because of how things go with that character.
And how he talks and behaves is very just NPC.
Yeah, there was quite a few bits where I felt like even the bit with the other cameo that we won't spoil too much here, that felt like it would be like the DM having a chance to have this backstory moment with one of the players.
It's moments like that where when that first happens, it seems like it's being played off as a bit of a joke, but as that scene progresses, it's actually like a deep conversation about these characters, and you're like, fuck this is it is more interesting than I thought.
Exactly. And we've admitted both in this episode and before that neither of us are massively knowledgeable about D&D, but you can tell from some of the inclusions of things. There's a particular kind of, I don't know if you call them an enemy, but something that comes up towards the kind of end bit, the slightly large gelatinous shape thing. It's a gelatinous cube, I'm pretty sure it's called. I won't spoil it there, but that's another thing where it's like, oh yeah, I know that's a D&D thing.
Yeah, there was lots of things that come up, and it's like I don't know what this thing, but you can tell that it's a reference to something in the world of D&D.
And I feel like they did that probably better than the previous one.
Yes.
I don't know 100%, but I'm pretty sure. I mean, from what I've heard, there's I think it's called the Beholder, which is the thing from the previous film with the loads of eyes.
Yes.
That we see in a moment in there, and I've seen people saying since then that the way they use that creature in the 2000 film is completely wrong because it's an almost not omnipotent, but the fact that they throw a rock and distract it is just spitting in the face of the D&D lore, and I think people will probably be happier with the way they did this one.
One thing when I was looking up trivia for this about one thing that breaks the law of the game in this.
Really? Okay,
which I won't mention now, but overall, considering how much is thrown in there, that's pretty good.
Yeah. I don't have too much to say that I can't get too detailed about, so should we go into spoilers? Shall we? It's a full 9 minutes for you there. So if you haven't seen it and you like the sound of that, then I'd probably recommend going to watch it.
I highly recommend going to see it.
Yeah. Cool. So, do you want to go through some of the main characters? Should we kind of go through them?
So I was going to say, I like all the characters. Chris Pine as a thief who used to be, I can't remember what they were called. Like a Harper,
which I imagine is a faction in D&D.
Yeah.
So one thing actually, just on that point, to divert very quickly, lots of the place names they named, were things that I was like, oh yeah, I know that. Like Neverwinter is something else.
Yeah.
Baldur's Gate is another game as well. I don't know. I didn't realize all these things were from D&D.
Yeah,
I was like, cool,
same.
Cool. But he's a Harper. He's also a bard, isn't he? Because they don't specifically go too much into that, unfortunately. He plays his stuff, but I feel like they could have done a bit more Bardi stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, but he's a thief primarily, and he's great fun. We get his backstory at the start when he's in the prison, which is great because it's a funny way of giving them a backstory without doing a whole.
I was a bit surprised about how much we got up front, but I think it was for the better because it allowed us to get straight in. It's almost like when we played like Shiver, another role-playing game, and you kind of tell your backstories at the start. It felt a little bit like that.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah.
He was good fun. Chris Pine was good. He was funny whilst also being serious, and had lots of heartfelt moments, particularly around like his daughter and his wife, which is the driving force of the film.
It is, and the heart, like you say that. I mean, one of my notes here is Star-Lord, because he's the easiest comparison of a Marvel character, and there's definitely those vibes where he kind of is flying by the seat of his pants a lot of the time. He doesn't really know what he's doing, but he's almost playing the fool archetype a little way, because he kind of gets away with a lot of stuff just by luck, which is a nice combination of like, he knows what he's doing, but he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing at the same time.
Nice
it was a fun character, and him kind of holding the group together whilst also kind of lying to everyone a lot of the time.
Yeah.
That was a nice dynamic that kind of came to a good place towards the end.
And you've got Michelle Rodriguez as Holga, who's kind of like the brute.
Yeah, Barbarian, I think.
She's fun. Often Michelle Rodriguez plays the same role in lots of things, and she's not too different from that. But I feel like she's got more
to do in this.
More heart in this.
Yeah.
The cameo we were talking about just now with tiny Bradley Cooper.
I think he's a halfling, which is basically just a hobbit, isn't it?
That was funny seeing Bradley Cooper. And I was like, holy shit, it's Bradley Cooper. But yeah, that whole thing talking about like her background and how she was ran out from her own tribe because she wanted to be with him, and then never got over that, and that broke
ruined their relationship.
It was really, and it was like, oh shit, this character's got stuff.
And the fact that like she came away from that both with the item, which came in useful later, the teleport hither to the wand or whatever it was, but also it didn't seem to like, she seemed to grow as a person from that encounter, and she was kind of like, I'm gonna prove that like I am a good person, but also like not in like to win them back necessarily. It was just to prove to herself kind of thing. So I thought that was quite a good way of handling that.
And obviously she's the character that gets killed at the end, which was emotional. I think everybody watching knew that he was going to use the magic thing to resuscitate her, but it was still emotional. Like Christina started crying during that bit.
Oh yeah, I had a couple of little.
I was like, okay, until we got the montage of her and Kira and how she was like a mother to Kira.
Yeah.
Then that got me, and I was like, I know she's coming back, but still.
Which is interesting because we talked about Thor: Love and Thunder almost a year ago now.
Yeah,
and there's a similar kind of moment towards the end, and I thought, oh yeah, Jane Foster, is going to be coming back from that. And there's a similar thing where they've got like a wish or whatever, and they use that in a slightly different way. And this is so much more effective than the kind of scene,
100%.
And
even though she's coming back, it's more predictable.
Exactly. Yeah, it really works really well.
And on those two, Edgin and Holga have a great relationship.
They do,
truly, like, it's no romance. And they even make a joke about that couple.
There's a couple of like,
but like just genuinely close friends, and it's like they stick with each other through thick and thin, and like they've got great chemistry. As friends.
And they're almost like co-parents of the. Well, they are co-parents of the child, but like you say, like in a very platonic way. And I did think throughout, I was kind of thinking, are they gonna then suddenly have this moment? And I was like, I really hope they don't, because they haven't set it up at all, and it's just, it would feel like lazy and weird.
And then forced. They never do, and I was like,
don't,
great,
and it's like nice,
we got Justice Smith as the sorcerer. I usually find Justice Smith quite annoying. Like,
there was one thing that I found particularly annoying about him, and it's the fact that his accent was not very good because he's American.
Yeah.
Did you pick up on his sometime? Okay, so
really.
Generally it was okay.
He was the only person that did an accent in this film, and apparently he tricked Hugh Grant into thinking it was his natural accent.
There was a couple of moments like when he was getting a bit more stressed and he wasn't doing like a normal, talking voice, where I could pick up on it, and it got like, because I knew he was American, I was just a bit like, but I get why they did it, because otherwise the whole core party would have been American, and they wanted something a bit different. But but character-wise, very fun.
Like I say, like I like Detective Pikachu. I wasn't a massive fan of him in it.
Right. Okay,
Jurassic World,
he doesn't really get much,
and he's a little bit annoyed.
Yeah.
But in this, I was like, oh, Justice Smith, he's going to be a bit annoying. But he's actually really fun, and like he's a genuine character who has a great character arc of he started as a shit sorcerer, then became basically a thief sorcerer, and then actually comes into his own and is really powerful and saves the day multiple times. And
it's all like a self-belief situation. And the fact that Chris Pine's character kind of did believe in him, but also kind of was just going along with it. There's a nice dynamic there.
Yeah.
It's like he does care about people and he does believe in people, but it doesn't always show properly. And and I thought just this, the idea of an inept like sorcerer is always a funny kind of fun character, especially when he's like such a loser, basically.
But it gives them room to grow as well. If you've got an all-powerful sorcerer at the start, unless it's like Gandalf, it's just a bit boring.
If they're part of the main lot and they're not going to go off on an adventure and come back, then you need to have some flaws there.
And then the final member of the group was Doric.
Yes, Sophia Lillis, I think.
And that was the one thing that I saw apparently wasn't law, is that druids can't turn into owlbears. Because owlbears are monstrosities rather than beasts.
Right, okay.
But it worked for this. And I was like, that's fine. She's great.
She was great. Yeah, she was a tiefling, which I didn't realize initially. So that's what the horns and the tail are. So she's kind of like almost like a demon character is kind of where it's going, which is interesting because we've kind of got two humanish characters. Justice Smith was like a half elf, I think it was. And then she's a tiefling. So it's a mix of races. Even though they all look pretty much even most of the time.
But she was fun. All her transformations are fun. I particularly loved the scene where she was like scouting out the castle.
Right, okay.
And Safina the Red Witch spots her and her escape.
Yeah, that was
changing
cool.
into all the different animals.
In the middle, I think there was a bit with like when she turned into a deer and stuff, and I felt a little bit like taken out of it, and I was like, okay, this is still kind of, but overall, I thought it was a very creative kind of use. I think it was also when the Red Witch suddenly was down the bottom with her as well. I was like, hang on, what's going on here? I know she's a witch; she can fucking move around.
She's a witch
or wizard, as they keep saying. But but a fun character, and that relation. Well, the fact there was a potential courtship before between her and Justice Smith, and that's like. It's a very non-romantic film overall, but it's a subtle kind of He's trying to woo her, but very, very ineptly again, and very like please give me a chance rather than like overly being flirty or anything like that. Yeah, and she's got her own reason to go on the quest with them, which is they've all kind of got their own little thing that keeps them going,
which is fun. And then originally part of the group is also Hugh Grant, who turns out
Forge, is he called?
Forge Fitzwilliam.
Forge Fitzwilliam.
He was great fun.
Was great fun,
like he, the proper kind of campy, clueless villain who's like a puppet,
like a Tory MP kind of thing. Is the vibe that I got from that. Like it's very kind of like a combo of a couple of people we've had in
except likable.
But like that kind of likable where you're kind of like, oh, you're a dirtbag, but like I can see why the public like you. Combination of a couple of people we've had in office recently, I think.
But every scene he was in was funny, and Hugh Grant really seems to be coming into this whole comedic role, whereas before he was more serious.
Because Paddington 2, he's quite similar, isn't he, in a way? Different character, but that same having fun, being a bit over the top and kind of campy villain.
He just seems to be having fun with it.
And what's interesting with him as well is, although you realise that he's a villain quite early on, there's like an element of like, how villainous is he? Because he likes having, this adopted daughter, but not necessarily for the right reasons, but not like in a completely awful way. And it's only really when he's really put on the spot at the end that it's like, okay, no, he's willing to do bad stuff for
and it's also like, he's not trying to destroy the world. He's just he's out there for himself, which I think it's nice to have that compared to Safina the Red Witch, who is trying to take over the world. Having the double villains always works well when in this kind of film where you don't want to have a too serious a villain.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I think another thing that I was thinking in terms of the politician vibes was some of his kind of oh, lots of people are going to die, but it's just kind of, I'm going to get on with my own thing. As long as people are going to be making money, there's definitely comparisons you can make with a couple of events recently.
100%.
Yeah.
Another character we haven't mentioned is Regé-Jean Page as the Paladin NPC, who is hilarious. Funnily enough, it was some trailer for some car or aftershave or something before the film.
He's in that,
And Christina was like, God, he's so hot. And we were like, we both just kind of watching, like, yeah, this guy's really hot.
Oh, did you not know he was in it?
I did. I said to Christina, like, oh, he's in this, And she was like, wait, what? And then when Justice Smith first came up, we both thought that he was playing a younger version. There is some similarities there. But yeah, his character's hilarious as well, like without meaning to be.
Again, interesting that he's from the race and the region of the bad guys, but is someone who's kind of escaped from that. But was slightly tarnished, had the small tattoo instead of the full thing. It was interesting. And to be a paladin, which is like a very holy knight kind of situation, it was very it's like having like a tiefling paladin almost. It's like very kind of.
He's got his own backstory as well, which is.
And the fact he's obviously lived for like at least couple hundred years. I think they said a number and it was quite a lot.
Like hundreds of years, I think. But yeah, he had his funny moments, like when he was explaining how to cross the bridge in the underworld, and then Justice Smith just steps in. The bit right at the end where Chris finds he just walks in a straight line. He's like, oh, he's coming up to a rock. What's he gonna do? And he just walks. Oh, he's gone over the rock. Had me in stitches. Like it was great.
And his kind of how he's just completely earnest about everything as well, and just there was a combination of a couple of things I've seen where people just don't understand jokes, but done in like a different way. It wasn't necessarily played for laughs. It was just like we were saying, more incidental humor.
Like similar, like we mentioned in Guardians, Drax doesn't get jokes and doesn't get things, but it's very different.
That's what I mean. Like, how he if does anything, Michelle Rodriguez is more of a Drax character in this than Regé-Jean Page. He's someone kind of entirely different almost.
And yes, he was good fun. There was lots of outright funny bits in this as well. The red fat dragon was just silly.
It's a good way of making it different, because if you just had normal dragon chasing him around, it would have felt a bit Hobbit, a bit whatever else.
And it still seemed like kind of scary. And
I really liked it had the trouble like extinguishing its like gas breath. That was fun, and obviously comes into play with the thing later.
And there's also, I love the bit where Chris Pine, Edgins, playing the thing to distract the guards. And then Simon gets his foot stuck and starts warping and gets really weird.
That was like weird, like internet meme humor shit. Like
it's very funny.
And in terms of the heist stuff I mentioned earlier, there's a couple of bits that stood out. There's the initial heist is that, in the flashback is kind of very standard, bog standard stuff. But the stuff with the portal on the painting I thought was really creative. I mean, the whole that portal was straight out of the game Portal, wasn't it? It was literally boom boom. Apart from
which
the two colours,
they used to get across the bridge, but also that's another thing I was talking about. They were like, oh, our plan is to put it on the painting, put it on the painting, and then it doesn't work because the paintings. And it's like, oh, okay, they need to think of a new idea.
It's the kind of thing like you rolled the wrong thing and it fell straight down kind of thing.
Exactly that. I love that kind of. It's a mini adventure in itself that didn't work out.
That's it, And another thing I was thinking with the games that were very much like a kind of Hunger Games or Triwizard Tournament or whatever. Getting in the gelatinous cube was quite a fun thing, where it's like to go underneath to get to the thing, it was getting into the mechanism,
and then turn into a snake to get out.
It was all just like, this is fun, like this is good stuff. It's very creative. I don't think I've seen anything like that before, or at least not for a while. Like it was all just like cool.
A lot of it was pretty original,
and it's the kind of shit like in a role-playing game. It's just like a player just has a weird idea and the DM rolls and you fucking get it and you're like, okay, you turn into a snake and go through the armhole. It's like cool. Like it's just just fun,
Another great bit that was in a lot of the trailers was the questions to the corpses played by Auntie Donna.
Yes. So we weren't sure before because we had a little chat about it.
I swear a couple of them looked exactly like Auntie Donna.
I don't know if I'm still not sure if the version we got was them, because I didn't really recognize any of the voices, but there were a couple. There's one that looked like Mark Bonanno very much.
Yeah,
so.
like exactly.
But they would. I've heard them do lots of different accents. I've listened to quite a lot of their podcasts, so it may be that it's just in the Australian version.
I feel like because they were putting on like, or whoever it was were putting on rough voices anyway. I think it was hard to figure out. Really,
but it definitely in some parts of the world, they've definitely done it. Who knows if... But that whole scene was very funny.
It was very funny.
And the fact there was one left as well was quite a fun bit.
Because obviously it's in the bit in the trailer. Yeah. And I was kind of hoping that wouldn't just be it. And we see more asking different people... Like, and different circumstances in which they were useless. Like the guy slipped and got killed by the bath before the battle.
And they're like, which one are you? Oh, my brother's the other guy. It's like Sven and Glenn or whatever. Yeah, that was a fun little scene. And it's the kind of thing where you'd think the DM would be having a great time telling all these stupid stories, trying to like just wear you down until you're just like, fucking tell me. And they leave the one guy as well. Yeah, it's very funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing, towards the end where you get the final fight, the final showdown, where it gets a bit more serious with
Safina or whatever.
Safina, I did say that 5 minutes ago. I like when they get to that final battle where it's just them and her, they all kind of get a go to show off themselves.
Yeah, it felt like the best parts of like an X-Men or a Fantastic Four film. Like there was a good moment where they were all like, they do their bits, but there was a moment as well where they were all kind of just all going for it at once, and it was madness. They're all combining their shit together.
You get Michelle Driggers punching, you get the owlbear attacking, you get the cool bit with Justice Smith with the hand from the ground fighting, tussling, and then it's also Chris Pine's plan that ends up getting it because his daughter's involved at all with her the invisibility thing that I had kind of forgot about, and it comes up and saves the day.
Exactly, and the fact that he did reverse the time thing and they were all just pretending. It's like,
again, they reused that magic, but it was a callback to show they've got past it, to show Justice Smith's growth.
Yeah.
This film was great, honestly.
Yeah, it was good fun. I think I'll go see it again because Amy didn't come with me, so I think she would really like it. Did you have particularly bad things?
So I said to Christine at the time when I saw it, when the credits came up, I was like trying to think of stuff to make notes to remember for this.
Yeah.
And I couldn't think of a single negative thing to write down. Yeah. And I've been through discussions, I've been through reviews, I've been through the plot again, and I still have nothing in my negative section. So
I've got a couple of bits. They're really kind of broad things. Like I think some of the jokes very early on didn't land like 100% for me, but maybe that was partly getting used to the tone. Like as it kind of moved on from the first, I would even say maybe even in the prison area at the start when they're first getting people together, very, very slight criticism there. So it really doesn't affect much of it at all.
Sorry, I'm quickly on that prison bit. The escape of Jonathan. When the guy was like, we were going to pardon you. Very funny.
That was funny, yeah. So it may have even been before that, like a couple of little bits. And also the pacing, that whole part threw me quite a lot because it really confused me about like they were telling the story and I was like, well, where does this fall into it? And I think although that's very interesting, and in hindsight I was like, it works because it allows you to know the backgrounds, as I said earlier. I think at the time I was a bit confused about like, I don't know, maybe it was the mood I was in or whatever, but like I was just a little bit like thrown off by that, I think, because it felt like about 25 minutes of the film, but I don't think it was that long. I think it was probably about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And it was just the fact there was lots and lots of backstory stuff, and I was like, I really hope it's not going to be all like this.
Yeah, but credit to it, it got it out the way.
That's what I mean. Yeah, I think in hindsight, but at the time, in my experience of watching it, it was just that was one of the things that stood out. I was like, oh yeah, maybe that could have been done slightly better. But overall, if those are the only things that I've got to say about it.
On that as well, I was thinking when you mentioned pacing, the pacing was, once you get past that bit, going on the different adventures really worked, having little mini stories.
I think that was really good after.
And I think I probably could have watched like a 3-4 hour version of this where they just keep going on little adventures.
Yeah, I mean, it was barely 2 hours, I think,
each one keeps you fresh because it's lots of little stories. If they had to go collect a couple more things, I would have been okay with that. I could have watched this for longer.
Absolutely. And one thing that I've not looked into how it's been doing, financially, box office wise.
So I saw it had a $38 million opening weekend in America, which was pretty good.
Yeah, not
higher than people thought it was going to be because it's
a
new franchise thing. It did better than Shazam, which is in an established franchise.
Yeah.
And because of the reviews and stuff have been good, people think it's going to do pretty well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to earn a lot because it had huge marketing campaign.
Yeah, I think the difference with, like you say, with established franchises and, especially MCU stuff, if that first week doesn't do well, then it's normally a drop off because all the diehard fans who don't want to miss stuff will go to that first weekend.
Yeah.
Whereas with this, because it's a new thing, it's almost like Avatar 2, although that was part of a franchise, people didn't rush out to see it first day because they're just like, it's Avatar. And that then built up as the first Avatar did.
I
so
saw
it may well do the same.
Somebody talking about the box office and how I think Shazam was $30 million. This was 38, but Shazam is a franchise film that
should do better.
You'll either go see it in the first week or not at all.
Exactly.
Whereas this will carry on.
Yeah, with Shazam inherently they left it too long to do a sequel, really, and there wasn't enough interest. And The Rock fucked up his one 6 months ago.
Yeah, the guy I was listening to talk about this. So Dungeons & Dragons' main competition is going to be Mario because that is also like a family-friendly adventure film.
And that has a little bit more behind it, maybe, because it's a bit more of a name.
And they described it as review proof in that it doesn't matter what the reviews are, people are going to go see Mario, which
and it's
fair.
Easter holidays, so
But I think because this has been getting great reviews, I think it's like 90% Rotten Tomatoes. It is going to get that word of mouth.
This is what I'm thinking. If all the reactions are as good as kind of our reactions have been, then I would love to see another one of these in 2 years.
100%.
The characters are all still knocking about. There's the extra couple of people with them. The Reggie's around somewhere, wherever he was called, and the daughter is gonna, age her up a couple of years, make her into kind of a thief with her invisibility thing. Like,
there's so much you can do in this universe, and they teased a lot of stuff without delving in.
Yeah, actually, that's another thing. While we're still talking about it, I know we were kind of wrapping up to. I thought the similar almost to the 2000 film. The fact that they just talk about these places and they don't try and explain stuff, and it's just like it's just the world, and you're just in it, and they're like, oh, and this people came from blah de blah, and they came from, and it felt like the best of fantasy and sci-fi where they don't hold your hand with stuff.
And me and you often talk about how great Star Wars is at world building, and a lot of that is they just name drop planets and races without explaining it, and let you figure it out. Exactly. Maybe they'll go further in depth later on, but let the fans figure it out. And with this, you can, because Dungeons & Dragons got such an established fan base, you can just name drop thing and people either love it or just be like, cool, there's this place called Neverwinter or something.
I felt like if I was watching an MCU film without having watched any other film before, like, oh yeah, all these places they're mentioning, I guess that's a thing from a film or whatever. Like, cool, it was quite refreshing in that sense. So,
it's nice because you don't need to know all that stuff to enjoy it.
No.
So it's like,
and that's the difference with this and a lot of other films, I suppose. Like, it's not reliant on watching previous stuff, and that's a good thing, isn't it? So,
hopefully they do make a sequel to this.
I would love to see a sequel.
I reckon they will because it's well received.
Yes, and like you say, they could do pretty much anything with it. Maybe kill someone off next time.
Yeah,
properly.
Sure, properly. So I've got a couple of bits of trivia here.
Yep.
One of them is when Forge betrays Edgin and Holger, Safina restrains the two by turning the rug into quicksand. Very similar to the trap shown in Dungeons and Dragons. Oh my god! 2000.
Yes, I was going to make a note about this. I completely forgot. Yeah,
when it still happened, I was like, oh my god, that's like the other one.
Quicksand rug. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah. I was like, nice. That's a nice. That's
a little reference, and we would never have got that if we hadn't.
And the other bit I found out. I can't remember where I saw this. It wasn't on IMDb.
Right.
But apparently the main cast, so the four of them who go on the adventure, played a game of D&D before they started filming in their characters.
Right.
So they had someone else be the dungeon master, and they played as Edgin, Holger, Simon, and Doric in this game.
Yeah, because I've seen interviews where Chris Pine has really been going on about it and going like, it should be taught in schools. It's really good for like confidence, for like improv, for all kinds of, and as an actor I bet they all fucking loved it, like, you know.
And it's a really good way of getting your actors to really know your characters and think about what the characters would do in different situations. I was like, that's genius, and they must all really like it. I saw on a red carpet someone gave Michelle Rodriguez, who's probably the last person you'd think to be into D&D, they gave her a massive 20-sided dice.
You say that, but Vinathan Diesel, who is co-star in the Fast movies, probably about 8 of them, I think she's in.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit less, I don't know. But he is a massive D&D guy.
Yeah.
And there's been lots of interviews where that's come up again recently. And he's like a big DM and he's into all that sort of stuff. So I would be surprised if she had at least played one game beforehand.
It's not out the realms of possibility that Vin Diesel could host a game with Michelle Rodriguez and like Henry Cavill would probably play as well, wouldn't he? Like these kind of buff like action stars sitting at home playing D&D it's great. But yeah, I guess the only thing left to ask is whether or not Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves lived up to the hype or not. Proj yes or proj no?
Yeah, it's indubitably a proj yes for me, yes.
Yeah, this is 100% a proj yes.
This is the biggest proj yes you've had?
The biggest proj yes I've had.
Yeah.
It's times like this where I'm like, it's probably good we've just got a binary system here, proj yes and proj no. But yeah, 100% proj yes.
At least for a good 6 months or so, this has been the biggest proj yes for me. I reckon Top Gun Maverick was pretty up there, to be honest.
Oh yeah, that was blew the hype out.
Yeah,
but I think this might be my favorite thing I've seen this year.
You reckon? Yeah, cool.
I can't remember everything I've seen, but
no, I can't.
Maybe Puss in Boots because I love Puss in Boots.
I reckon I like this more than Puss in Boots, but I saw this in the cinema and I didn't see Puss in Boots.
Yeah, they're different experiences, but
but let us know. We've got all our contact details in the episode description, so let us know if you're a proj yes or proj no for this one.
Yes,
and also you can find all our other stuff there as well. Social medias, email, and on the same feed, there's project episodes where we talk about all sorts of different things.
We do
have project in the title.
Yeah. So thank you for listening and goodbye.
Bye.